Hello and welcome everyone, Tiberius here, and today is day 4 of the TryHackMe Advent of Cyber 2023. Yesterday we executed an exhaustive brute force attack against a pin code, meaning we generated every possible pin until we found the correct one. We're continuing the brute forcing theme today, so instead of an exhaustive brute force, we're going to use some knowledge about human elf behavior to try and speed up our attack. So without further ado, let's get hacking. Okay, so we are on the Advent of Cyber 2023 room at tryhackme.com. And the first thing we're going to want to do is start the attack box. You can do this by clicking this big blue button in the top right. Now, what this will do in a second is, yep, here we go. The right side of my screen will load the attack box. Now, you don't have to do this. If you prefer using the VPN provided by TryHackMe, then of course you can do that. It will work exactly the same way. But what we want to do now is scroll down to day 4. It's actually task 10. The day is called Baby It's Cooled Outside. That's how you pronounce that, cool. And what we need to do here is actually start the machine. So we're going to do that. And actually, if we scroll to the top again, we'll see in about 60 seconds, we will have an IP address for this machine. The attack box can access that IP address. So can Kali Linux, for example, if you connect via the OpenVPN. Okay, while both of those load, let's read through the story. The Antarctic Crafts Company, globally renowned for its avant-garde ice sculptures and toys, runs a portal facilitating confidential communications between its employees stationed in the extreme environments of the North and South Poles. However, a recent security breach has sent ripples through the organization. After a thorough investigation, the security team discovered that a notorious individual named McGreedy, known for his dealings in the dark web, had sold the company's credentials. This sale paved the way for a random hacker from the dark web to exploit the portal. The logs point to a brute force attack. Normally, brute forcing takes a long time, but in this case, the hacker gained access with only a few tries. It seems that the attacker had a customized word list. Perhaps they used a custom word list generator like cool. Let's try it out ourselves. Okay, so we have a few learning objectives. We want to learn what is cool, what are its capabilities, how can we leverage it to generate custom word lists from a website, how can we customize the tool's output for specific tasks. So how this day will basically go, we're going to use cool against a website to generate both a list of valid usernames, or potential usernames I guess, also a list of potential passwords. We're then going to use wfuzz, which is a fuzzing tool, to basically brute force the login using those custom usernames and passwords. That's how we're going to do the day for this video. However, if you stick around to the end, I'm actually going to solve this room in a few different ways. So we're going to use ffuf, which is basically an alternative to wfuzz. Then we're going to use hydra, which is a very specific tool for brute forcing logins. And finally, we're actually going to use Turbo Intruder for Burp Community Edition. Now, a lot of people get frustrated with Burp Community's Intruder tool because it's basically very slow compared to the professional version. But the Turbo Intruder extension is actually very fast and it is free, and you can use it in the Community Edition. Alright, so let's get to it. Okay, so I've made a few small modifications to my attacker box. You obviously don't need to do this. I just prefer being able to switch between applications here rather than the side menu. I also have Firefox running through Burp Suite Community Edition. That's just so I can see all the requests. And I have my terminal here. Now, obviously, you can read through the overview stuff here as well. I definitely recommend doing that. But what we're going to do is skip right ahead to the practical challenge. To put our theoretical knowledge into practice, we'll attempt to gain access to the portal located here. Now, when copying from TryHackMe into the attack box, it usually doesn't work. What we need to do is click this arrow here, go into the clipboard, paste whatever we've copied here, and we can close it. And then hopefully when we actually paste in here now, it should work. Lovely. Alright, our goal for this task is to find valid login credentials in the login portal. You might want to follow the step-by-step tutorial below as a guide. We're definitely going to be doing that. The first thing we need to do is create a password list using cool. Use the Antarctica Crafts homepage to generate a word list that could potentially hold the key to the portal. Okay, so this is the cool tool, and basically what it's going to do is it's going to crawl the website we give it, extract words based on a few parameters, and save them to a word list. -D2 is actually usually default. That means depth 2, which means basically how many times it will click a link. So for example, it might click a link on the home page to get to the login page. There might be another link on the login page, and it might click that if it's depth 2. -M will basically just set the minimum number of characters that a word needs to have in order to make it to the word list. -W is going to write the word list to passwords.txt. We have the URL we want to start at here, and then -- with -numbers basically just tells cool, hey, if you see a number, that's fine to include in the word list as well. So let's go to our terminal, and we're basically going to do this: D2, M5, W passwords.txt, HTTP 10.10.106.165, and then with numbers. Okay, and that should go off and crawl the website. We do wc-l passwords. That'll actually count the number of lines, which means basically there's 254 passwords in this file, potential passwords I should say. If we run less on this file, there we go, we can see it's crawl, it's got Antarctica, probably from the title, then style sheet is probably from the CSS file, everything like that. Okay, awesome. Create a username list using cool. Use the Antarctica team members page to generate a word list that could potentially contain the usernames of the employees. Okay, so again, using cool here, -M5 is going to set the minimum length to 5 again. -W usernames.txt. Now we're starting on team.php, which is the team page, and we're going to make sure we convert everything to lowercase. Now one other thing that we probably want to do, which isn't done here, so again, the depth for cool is usually defaulting to 2. We don't want it to crawl, so I'm actually going to add D0 here. So let's see what that does. We add D0, M5, usernames.txt, 10.10.106.165/team.php. Case. What we can actually do as well is just check out that page manually. If we scroll down, looks like we have Isaiah and Daniel and Job. Now Job has 3 letters, so I assume that his name is not going to appear in the word list, but it looks like they're the only 3 people. So what we can do now, if we do wc-l and count the number of, we have 38 usernames, which obviously seems a bit much. So we can be clever and we can use Sublime here and edit this word list down a bit. So if we look, the first few words are probably not valid usernames. In fact, I think until we get to Isaiah, there aren't really any that I would expect as usernames. So I'm gonna risk it and delete all those. Probably don't need security in there, and it doesn't look like Job made it, which was expected. So in fact, I'm going to just leave usernames.txt as Isaiah and Daniel. And again, they were the only 2 usernames that appeared to be valid on that team page as well. Brute force the login portal using wfuzz. With your word list ready and the list of usernames from the team members page, it's time to test the login portal. Use wfuzz to brute force login.php. Now before we do this, it is telling us that login.php is where our login credentials are sent, but we should probably test that out. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go to login.php, I'm going to do test and test. Because just because you're on a page doesn't necessarily mean that the credentials you enter on that page are going to be sent to the same page. Sometimes they might be sent somewhere else. But in this case, if we check burp, it actually does look like they were sent properly. And here we go down here. Username test, password test. Lovely. Okay, so wfuzz is basically a fuzzing tool. It's used for brute forcing various things for web applications. It has a very interesting syntax. So you basically define certain fuzzing parameters here. We define this as a file called usernames.txt. There's a file called passwords.txt. We're going to hide any responses which contain this. Please enter the correct credentials, and all that is the message here. All right, and basically that tells us if we get this message in the response, that means obviously our credentials didn't work. So by hiding that string, right, hiding any responses with that string, that means that we're basically just ignoring any credential combinations, username and password combinations that don't work. And again, we have -u for the URL. -d is basically just the post data. And here we have username equals fuzz and password equals fuzz, but you can see there's actually a 2 between the last z's. So that basically means the first fuzz refers to this this fuzzing file here. The second fuzz refers to this one. Okay, so let's actually try that out. I am actually going to copy this just to make it slightly easier. So again, we're going to copy, going to go into here, paste that in. Then if I paste here, that's looking good. Okay, so you see that really fast. Obviously there were a total number of 508 requests. That's basically because we had 2 usernames and we tried all of the passwords with each username. So it looks like it found one valid credential, Isaiah, with the password of happiness. All right, let's actually try that. So I'm just going to copy these. Paste that in there, and then I'm going to cut the password out, paste it there, and there we go. Alright, that looks good. So I think now what we can do is answer these questions. What is the correct username and password combination? It was Isaiah and happiness. Perfect. What is the flag? So I imagine there's going to be a flag in one of these messages. There we go. Oops. Okay, and then we can complete this room. Alright, so that is how you solve the room officially, using wfuzz and using cewl. But stick around and we will resolve the room using, first we're going to use ffuf, then we're going to use hydra, and then finally we're going to use burp's Turbo Intruder. Alright, so we solved the challenge using wfuzz, but I know there's going to be people who will want to see it done using ffuf or ffuf. So we're going to do that now. Now, ffuf is definitely in some ways more powerful than wfuzz, but it does have a different syntax, and it's not, I guess, as quote-unquote clever as wfuzz in some cases, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So this is the command that we'll be using. So we're using ffuf, -s to silence everything. And now we're going to provide it with the fuzzing files. So in this case, what we're saying is, hey, use usernames.txt and assign it to a kind of like a variable, I guess, which is user in all caps. And the same with the passwords.txt file, we're assigning it to pass. Then we have the URL as before. Again, the post data as before. This time though, you do need to actually specify the content type header, which is a little bit different. So when you're making a post request, you don't necessarily, you're not necessarily sending the data in a standard format. You can send it in multiple formats. Like you might send it in a JSON object, for example. But what we want to do here is specify that we are actually sending it as we would if we were using a form. And then the other thing we need to do is use -fr to basically hide all responses which contain please enter the correct credentials. So let's do that now. We're going to copy this. We're going to go back and we need to place it in here so we can copy it across. Now ffuf should be installed. Let's just clear the screen a little bit. Paste. And let's see what happens. And there you go. Almost immediately we get Isaias with a password of happiness. Okay, so that's how you would do that in ffuf or ffuf. Okay, so far we've used two generic fuzzing tools, wfuzz and ffuf, to basically fuzz the web application login. Now we're going to use Hydra, which is, it's still a fuzzer, but it's basically specifically designed for login. So it's a login brute force fuzzing tool, and you can't use it for really anything else. It should be installed by default, and you can see it has a lot of supported services here. All right, so this is not just a web fuzzer. This can fuzz various things: FTP, SSH, RSH, for example, SMB, lots of different protocols. But we want to specifically fuzz HTTP, and not only that, we want to fuzz HTTP post forms. All right, we're using a form where it's a post request. You can actually tell that when you go to Burp Suite, you get a post request when we log in, and it comes from a form. So that's basically what we want to use. There are various HTTP options, but what we want here is actually, it's partially hidden, HTTP -post. So these are basically, we can either choose get or post -form. And if we actually run Hydra with -U HTTP -post -form, we'll get a lot of good information here. So we have syntax, basically we need the URL, any form parameters, and then a condition string. The condition string in this case will be the error message you get with an invalid login. So it goes down, it gives a bunch of examples. These are really useful examples. But to save time, I mean, again, I recommend reading through this, but to save time, I already have pre-made the request here. So we're using Hydra with -L, providing a list of usernames. Now, if this was a lowercase l, then whatever is provided here would be the username, right? So if we do lowercase l followed by admin, that would use admin as the username. But if it's capital, it will read stuff from a file. Like similarly with -P for passwords, capital P means look in this file and load the passwords there. A lowercase p means take the password as it is here. Then we have HTTP -post -form, followed by the IP address, the path to the actual login page, then a colon. And now we need basically to use quotes. If you don't use quotes, this can really mess up a lot. So I always recommend using quotes. This is basically the post data, right? So if we actually go back to Burp Suite, so we can see the post data here. And all I've done there is copy it, but I've replaced whatever username we had, like it was test, with this, all right? So it's user in all caps surrounded by caret symbols. And then the password, again, similarly, pass all caps surrounded by caret symbols. And that will basically just replace the username and password with whatever is in these files as it reads the files line by line. Okay, we have an end quote, then a colon, and then finally this conditional. And it's exactly the same as before. It's basically the string that will appear in the response if we ever find an invalid login. So let's copy this, and we're going to paste it again. Okay, I'm going to clear it and paste, and then hopefully what this should do, it looks like I have a restore file. So sometimes if you run Hydra, I was running it earlier, it'll create a restore file. You can just delete that. All right. So this is going to take a little bit of time. It by default uses 16 threads, but hopefully it should run through this quite nicely. And there we go. We get exactly the same result. Isaias with the password of happiness. Okay, so the final method we're going to use is Turbo Intruder in Burp Suite Community Edition. Now, as I said before, you can use Intruder, obviously, but Intruder in Community Edition is very slow. It's purposefully done that because they want you to buy the Professional Edition to speed it up. But there is a free extension, which is ironically made by a chap at Portswigger. And it's really, really, really fast. So we're going to use that instead. You can also install it in the attack box. I'll show you how to do that right now. Basically what you want to do is go to the Turbo Intruder page on GitHub. You want to click releases. Then basically in this latest version, you can use the pre-release, it seems to work fine. Download the Turbo Intruder-all.jar. I've already done that, so what we're going to do is go to Burp Suite, go to extensions, click add. Now it's a Java extension, so keep that as Java. Select the file. It's going to, if you download it on the attack box, it'll just be in the root directory, so it's right there. Click next, and then hopefully it should load nicely. Excellent. Okay, so now what we want to do is grab our request here. So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to use one of the requests where we didn't log in here. And I'm just going to right click, go to extensions, Turbo Intruder, send to Turbo Intruder. Unfortunately, that's being covered up by my head a bit, but there we go. And this new window should appear. Now, what I'm going to do is delete the cookie because this is probably an authenticated cookie at the moment. And the next thing we're going to do is replace the username here with %s and this password also with %s. All right, and that just tells Turbo Intruder where to put each word. Now, we don't want to use this default script here. What we want to do is go to last code used. There'll be a drop down, go down to multiple parameters. And this basically is almost set up for login attempts, really. So you have a few things. You have for first word in, and then it opens a file. For second word in, and it opens another file. They iterate over each other. And so basically we can define first word as our username and second word as our password, and everything should be good. So all we really need to do here is change this first word path to /root/usernames.txt, and this second word path to /root/passwords.txt. And that's basically it. Leave everything else here the same. All right, first word, second word. Don't try and change these. Just make sure that obviously you have %s and %s up here in your code. The next thing we want to do is in this handle response, we just need to change this if line. All right, because again, we're only interested in responses that don't contain the error message. So what we want to do is basically put a quote here and do if please enter the correct credentials and then do not in request.response. Okay, and that should be it. So now hopefully if we click attack, what it's going to do, it'll warm up, you'll see down here, and then it'll send quite a few requests. So it's already sent 253 requests, and boom, there we go. So if we expand this payload tab up here, then we get Isaiah/happiness. So that's obviously the first word and then the second word there. So again, that's just another way of solving the challenge, and hopefully now you'll know a little bit more about Turbo Intruder and you won't be so frustrated when using Burp Suite Community Edition. Again, it's a little bit of a learning curve because you are really just editing Python code here, but again, this drop down is amazing. So many different scenarios just almost coded for you. You just need to remember to update the request up here and put the %s wherever you want the parameter to appear in your requests. That's all from me. I really hope this video helped get you through day 4. Please let me know in the comments how you got on. Remember to check the Advent of Cyber room tomorrow for the next challenge. And if you have any questions, join the TryHackMe Discord server to get support from your fellow hackers. I hope everyone has a great rest of the holiday season, and of course, a very happy new year.